I'm going to be talking about cross-browser testing and automation with Puppeteer and TypeScript. And I'm Meera, and I work as an engineer at Hasura, and I'm joining you guys today from Bangalore, India. And first off, I would like to thank Wroclaw TypeScript. I worked a lot on pronouncing that close to how you would pronounce it, but yeah. So thank you guys for having me here, and special thanks to Ola for roping me in. How this talk came about is this is one of my side projects. I do quite a bit of those just to get practice coding stuff up, and usually I present them at our internal front end meets that Alexandra hosts at office. So this was part of that, and she said that you should try talking at our meetup, and so here I am with a few variations on a few integrations that I've been working on. So first off, there are a lot of words here, right? Cross-browser, testing, automation, Puppeteer, TypeScript. Just too many. The title is just like too long. So let's split it up a bit. TypeScript, of course, I'm not gonna, you're all working with TypeScript. So let me go on to start with what Puppeteer is. Puppeteer is simply a Node.js library to start with, developed at Google. And what it does is it basically uses it treats the Chrome or Chromium browser as a puppet, and it provides high-level APIs to control these the browser. So, and this is using the DevTools protocol that the Chromium browser has, and it is headless by default. And it is used for a bunch of things, which we will look at. So stuff that Puppeteer can do includes, browser automation. So if you want to test out or automate things like form submission for your website, for testing out UI, and it even is capable of doing things like intercepting your network requests. And so say you have a web app or a web page with like a gazillion pages, and testing it out quickly, right? It becomes easy with a tool like Puppeteer. So, and also people use Puppeteer to diagnose performance issues, see slow loading pages, diagnose what is causing those issues. And Chrome extension developers use it. And one more popular application is for web scraping. And quite a bit more, I like to call it, this is a maze, literally. So, so that's a little intro to what Puppeteer can do. So I'm actually gonna stop talking about Puppeteer too much here and show you some stuff integrations that I've been working on. So to quickly start with our quintessential Hello World type program. So here goes, Hello Puppeteer. What it's going to do is basically grab the screenshot. So this is my code. What it's going to, let me quickly run you through this. So, so every time we are trying to use Puppeteer, we are going to have a browser launched, and we also open up a new page. And then in here, by default, it is headless. By headless, what I mean is the browser GUI is not going to open up. You're not going to see the browser. But if you do want that also, that is possible if you just go in here and say headless false. But I mean, we don't really want that now, because if you get into that, it does get a little slow. For our purposes, we can retain it as headless. So what I'll do quickly now is show you how this works. So I'm grabbing the screenshot from Wikipedia homepage. So that's like a super simple application for you. And just going back to the code here. Yeah. So all these come in from the Puppeteer library. And one more quick thing that I want to show you is grab a screenshot, but kind of block out all the images. So this will kind of give you a sense of, say, how a page would look, say, when there's a slow connection, images aren't loading, or when somebody behind a firewall. I know some companies tend to block out images, and I mean, when you have like a protected sort of network, how does your website look? So to try out these sort of things, this is a useful little integration. So I'm just going to grab the Google News front page and block out all the images in the screenshot. So block images. I hope that worked. There you go. So news.png. So zoom in a bit. So as you can see, just all the images basically blocked out. All right. So moving on. Now we will talk about slightly more, useful applications. So how can you, test out DOM elements using Jest and Puppeteer? So for this, I have something called Welcome to the Internet. This is available as a GitHub repo also. So what it does is it has these pages where there are problems, basically, like common problems we build, we see, we use. So for example, broken images. Yeah, so something like this. So how do you test out if your app or your website has these sort of things? So Puppeteer can be useful for this sort of thing. So there are many other use cases listed here, but I will stick to this broken images thing and show you how we can use Jest, the Jest test suite along with it. So I've written, yeah. Yeah, so I have Jest configured here, and to work with TypeScript basically. So I have two examples to show you. One is again the Google News page, which does not have any broken images. The other one is our broken image web page, which we will test out. But before that, I want to tell you how I'm approaching this idea of checking whether the images are broken or not. So so basically, I'm grabbing all the image elements from the page, having them in an array and looping through them. A common way to check whether an image is broken or not is to check for something called the natural width of the image. So the natural width is 0. It means that there is no image, as in it's a broken image. So, but if it is greater than, if it's a positive number, it is fine. So that's the logic I've used in here for the test. So expect image dot to be greater than 0 for here for the natural width. So that's the test I'm gonna run here basically. So first time is hopefully a positive test. Test passes for the Google News website. So, and I also have the test script set up in my package.json to work with Jest. Fingers crossed. All right, looks good. Google News is good to go, so no problems. So let me comment that out now, and now we will test our problematic page that we saw here, this particular one. So let's try this out now. Okay, all right, there you go. So yeah, so it's expecting a positive value, but it turns out to be, we have a couple of images here which kind of fail the test. So this is, this is an interesting way in which, Jest and Puppeteer can be used together to test out some of your UI elements. All right, so moving on, yeah, this is an interesting one where I will also use a bit of a GraphQL integration and like show you how I do a homegrown discount notification service of sort. So yeah, so for this, yeah, yeah, I have a very simple HTML page setup, and I'm going to just open it with the live server here. My e-commerce site called imazon.com, and it's just a label which is changing values every, obviously because I want to grab it when there is a discount, and I don't want to keep opening up imazon.com like every so often and see whether the price went down. I want to have like my own way of figuring out if this is changing. So so for that reason, I've set this up, and yeah, like I said, it changes every 5 seconds, and the idea is to monitor this and kind of push this data every time it changes back to a database. So that way, I will also have spoken about databases, which is part of today's topic. So yeah, okay. So we have this running here, and what I am going to do now is. Node price watcher is what I want. Okay, let's quickly look at the code now. Price watcher, yeah. So I'm using the Axios library for the accessing the GraphQL endpoint, which I will talk about in a minute. So what I'm doing here is I'm making use of the Puppeteer mutation observer and mutation listener methods that come with it. So what it is basically doing is looking for changes in the label here. So this is set up like a, you may want to think of this like a stack data structure where, so old value, then 5 seconds later there's another new value, then that becomes the old value. So it keeps rotating. So think of the top of the stack being popped every 5 seconds, and there is a new old value, and then there's a new value. So basically keeps changing every 5 seconds, and the stack pops up. So that is the removed nodes and added nodes that we talk about here. And so we basically, yeah, we're calling, yeah, we call this function, and this is where the actual stuff happens. So I'm passing on my old price and new price to this GraphQL local Hasura instance that I have set up, and passing in this mutation here. So if you're new to GraphQL, I encourage you to check out Hasura as well as the graphql.org site for like really good resources on GraphQL. But I'm guessing many of you are aware of GraphQL already, so I will just explain what's going on here. So I'm passing in the variables here, the old price, new price, and let's see what happens when I run this. Yeah, there you go. So initially the price is 200, changes to 386, 386 changes to 749. And you also see that the data is being pushed and returned here. So I will also show you the Hasura instance that I've set up here. This is just running locally on my Docker. So I have a table called discount watcher with old price and new price being the data that I'm sending. These two are just automatically populated. So yeah, if you notice here, whatever was showing up on, yeah, in here basically shows up here. Yeah. So this will keep populating until I stop my service there. And what I've also done is, I'm not going to be watching this database all the time. I want an email notification, right? So I've set up an event trigger here. to send me an email every time this thing runs. So I'm running it as a local service. So let me start that up so that that also can happen alongside it. So I have my email service running set up already using SendGrid and SMTP. But let me go back in here. Okay, that's a lot of, let me quickly restart this. Hopefully it goes well. Demo gods or the Dalai Lama. Yeah. So this, yeah. So the email is being sent. We can take a look here as well. My email has content saying your PlayStation has a discount or something. Yeah, see, there you go. Email started coming in. Yeah. Yeah, this is me sending it to me, so it doesn't recognize it anyway. So it says the PlayStation price just changed. So this is via SendGrid, via Hasura event triggers. If you've not tried event triggers in Hasura so far, it's a really interesting sort of feature. I encourage you to try it. But for now, I will stop this email service, and I will also stop this discount watching service, so to speak. So yeah, this was kind of an interesting thing for me because it had a lot of moving parts. So it was interesting to kind of get them together and yeah. So moving on to, yeah, so that was that. And yeah, since we mentioned cross browser, I will have to mention that while Puppeteer is awesome with Chrome and Chromium, and they also supposedly have a Firefox library, the Firefox library, from reviews that I've read, is not super reliable, and a lot of times it doesn't cut it. So Microsoft actually has come up with something called Playwright, which is newer than Puppeteer and basically does cross-browser. So I will show you a quick demo of that. It can work with Chromium, Firefox, and WebKit, Safari's WebKit. Here you go. This is a very simple example again of a screenshot. I didn't want to get too much into Playwright. So what I will do is, yeah. So what's happening here is I've given 3 browser types here: Chromium, Firefox, and WebKit, and then loop through it and then grab the screenshot. So what happens here is basically produces 3 screenshots: one for Chromium, Firefox, and WebKit or Safari. So Playwright is actually seen as a more useful sort of library, but then Puppeteer is also catching up and trying to get on the cross-browser bandwagon as well. So, but I wanted to show Playwright to you guys. And yeah, so going, yeah. So yeah, so these are the demos that I wanted to show you folks. I also wanted to point you to some more resources. So similar to Puppeteer, I also spoke about Playwright. We have more like Nightwatch. There's one more called Nightmare. Really cool, also open source and accepting contributions, I think. Phantom.js is actually the oldest, came even before Puppeteer, but it's now no longer maintained, I suppose. So I also want to point you to some of, since I spoke about GraphQL, I wanted to point you to the Learn tutorials of Hasura, and also a newsletter if you want to, stay in tune with some of our news, latest news. So that is all from me. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you, Meera. Thank you. It was amazing, and especially we should all congratulate Meera because it was her first talk during public meetups. So congratulations, and it was really, really good talk. Now I think we will wait for for some questions. Yeah, so please type them in the chat.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope I can sell it to Amazon, maybe the discount notification service. Okay, how do Puppeteer and Playwright compare for with Cypress for end-to-end testing? I tried using Playwright, Jest, and DOM because Cypress really annoys me. Okay. I have to say that I do not know. I just know that people speak about Selenium a lot in this context. I'm not very sure about Cypress, but I think maybe Ola spoke about Cypress. I don't know if she can help me with that. But the problem with Selenium, I will tell you, is people say that it's unreliable, and especially when it comes to DOM testing. So people say that Puppeteer and Playwright are far more reliable, and they also use a different sort of, there's a layer, there's a server that you need to run before you can run these tests when it comes to Selenium. Whereas in the case of Puppeteer Playwright, you can directly use the API tools that Chromium and the protocol allows you. So it's a bit quicker also in that sense. So that is for Selenium, but for Cypress, I'm afraid I do not know. But if somebody else knows, I would really appreciate any inputs.
So one of the things like user facing are that I know Cypress has all those like assertion functions, like it provides you with API to test a lot of like details, and Puppeteer it only gives you, and tools like Puppeteer they give you kind of like API to access the browser, to crawl the browser and so on. However, there is something called, I don't know, Puppeteer Jest plugin. So it kind of allows you to have all those assertion functions like for Puppeteer inside of your Jest tests. And another thing is that I thought that Cypress is like too big for some use cases, and it's pretty slow as well. So like if you have something simple to test, I guess tools like Puppeteer are something to go with. Maybe someone else has other experiences with Cypress. Actually, maybe Piotr has some experiences with Cypress. Maybe he can tell us more.
That was my question, though.
Yeah. We can. Yeah. Please go ahead.
So what I was missing, you mentioned assertion function. What I was missing was like this visual test runner from Cypress, because Cypress really annoys me, and I really want to stop using it because it's slow and it forces you to split your dependencies, so you don't install it on CI, because installing it on CI crashes my pipelines daily. And but I lacked general automation for tests for Puppeteer. I couldn't find any like a Jest plugin or a library for that, so I had to build some of that stuff myself. And this is the part that's built in Cypress. That was really useful to me.
Cool. I see we have another question from Jakub.
Yeah, so this is maybe also like related to that, because I was using Cypress.js, and one thing that I was missing in one of the scenarios, I really wanted to kind of like, because in Cypress you can mock and just let's say intercept let's say fetch, for example, windows.fetch for testing, just to mock the backend API, and so if you only want to test how the front end behaves. And you couldn't, for example, and you couldn't intercept requests, all the requests, let's say something like you showed with those images. And I suppose you could do more things, not only block and maybe reply with something else. So that would be, so that would be really So that would be one benefit, I suppose, of Puppeteer, because this was something that was lacking a bit in Cypress. Yeah, so I suppose if you confirm that, and okay, so maybe another question would be, so you can, as you said, you could run in the headless false in the headed mode. Can you, for example, do some things like pause when the script is running to see how is the DOM behaving, so you can debug something? Can you do something like that, for example? Because like when you're writing some tests, yeah, if you want to just debug part of the test and see what is wrong with your
breakpoints.
Breakpoints, yeah. So I suppose that works too, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it does work. Breakpoints work in Puppeteer. And for the earlier question on network interception, yes, definitely more is possible. And in fact, I think you have a method called set request interception, and you can set it to be true and do a lot more than what I showed you with respect to the images. So in fact, it's quite, I mean, there are so many methods in there, modules in there. So I would encourage everybody to check them out, because this was really like a experimental project. So this is fun for me. So I would encourage all of you to check some of these out, and I would like to learn myself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one more thing, also relating to the differences, maybe you will know, because also like a nice thing in Cypress is that you have a lot of built-in retriability. Basically, you can just send this command, click something, and then Cypress will, let's say, retry to click the button for some time until, for example, until it appears. Yeah, and it's very useful because you don't have to, especially with async actions, you don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to set timeouts or something like that. Do you have this kind of API in Puppeteer, for example, to interact with the DOM and with DOM in such a way?
You mean to say like a workflow, like say for example, filling up a form, box by box, and then clicking a submit, like an entire workflow is totally possible. Absolutely, absolutely doable. But were you having something else in mind? I'm not sure I understood.
Because a lot of actions in Cypress have like inbuilt, they retry. For example, if you tell the script that click some element, even if it's not yet in the DOM, it will wait for 3 seconds unless and then it will fail. And it makes writing tests with dynamic single page applications where things just show up after a moment, when you want to check that something exists after some action, for example. So after the response comes from the backend, you don't have to set timeouts or check in the loop. You just say you click this button and it will click it even after it appears after 3 seconds. Yeah, so I'm not sure if something like that is in Puppeteer.
I remember reading about this. I've not actually tried out something like this, but I remember seeing this in the library for sure. It is there, available.
Okay, nice.
Thank you. Oh, see, there you go. TJ was just saying Puppeteer has wait for methods which can target selectors or times. Yeah, I think that should take care of your use case, Jakub.
Okay, thanks.